Good. Yeah, still good morning. Good morning, folks. How you doing? My name's Allison. Yeah, I'm not sure if you've been to any of my sessions before, but yeah, my name is Allison, and I keep on saying just the fun I have in life with with that name alone. Up to last week, the university had me down as she. That happens all the time. I get pulled over at airports, um, all sorts of shenanigans. Once accepted for a women's conference. I didn't know that. I arrived over in England and it was a women's conference. I actually brought two mates with me. They weren't happy. But the ladies were very nice and they let us sit at the back. I am a business owner of Spark Coaching, where I come alongside executives who are basically high achievers. I come alongside them and help them go further than they could go on their own. I'm a thought partner for them. Also, I'm a qualified counsellor. I have a retail business, employing staff. I'm married 25 years, 4 kids. The eldest is 22, just left university, and the youngest is 4. And he's crazy, good crazy. An interesting fact about me is I'm bionic. Yeah, I'll say it again, I'm bionic. Folks, I lost my hearing. I'm stone deaf. I lost my hearing back in my 30s, late 30s. That ended up with me getting a cochlear implant, which meant that I lost my hearing and had to learn to listen again. And that significance of that, or the irony of that, is now that I listen to ignite the spark in my client. And I see it as a privilege because I get to sit with a ringside seat and watch people change. But today we're going to kick off with our main theme is developing strong leadership from the inside out. So Julie, you want to put up the first slide there? As a header slide, just leading is always an inside out game. So in essence, we lead out of who we be. It doesn't make good English, but we lead out of who we be. It's not just what we do, but who we be to do what we do. So my first question to you, and to get your fingers going for the chat box, is that who do you need to be for the next chapter of your life? And in that, I mean, I know there's a good cross section of people here today. Maybe you're a first year heading into second year, and really your first year at university has been in isolation. You haven't seen a soul. Maybe you're heading into your placement year, and again, you've had that experience this year, but you don't know, maybe you even got a placement job, or maybe your final year and you're heading into a big open world, and maybe your university experience hasn't been what you thought it would be. Or maybe you're a part of the alumni and you're here today. And one thing I've noticed about what's happened over the last year is that it's like the big on-off button has been switched off, and people are not running around the mouse wheel as such, and they're asking the bigger questions. Maybe you're here today and you're asking, is this the right place for me, right job for me, whatever it is. So I would like you just to put the comments into the chat box. Who do you need to be in this next stage? Graduate adult worker. I need to be me, the true me. Be yourself. Okay, more authentic. I need to slow down, adaptable. Folks, this is great feedback. Who do you need to be? Flexible and agile. Resilient, more confident, take more risks. That's great, folks. Great answers. Thanks for being so honest. We spend so much precious time and energy managing perceptions and carefully crafted and edited versions of ourselves. It's almost like we have this inside life, inside world, and we have this outside life, outside face. And we're bombarded with social media. To protect ourselves, we keep ourselves here, the real us, and we We put out this face of who we are to be. But the social media, there's so many things we're told we have to be a certain way and do a certain way that it's, if we're seen as being imperfect here, we take it here as being inadequate. And that, folks, is just not true. And what it does is it fans this flame of this thing we have inherent that it seems to be in everybody. And it's the thought of, I am not enough. I am not enough. And it seems to be something that we pick up. It's a trait that's, I believe, if you strip everything back, it comes back to this core limiting assumption that I am just not enough. A lot of it can be programmed in from childhood. For whatever reason, maybe you had a parent that was expecting so much, and it was just written into your program that I'm not enough. And neural pathways form so easily in our head that, not to get too technical, but it's like neurons that fire together or wire together, and they get covered in this thing called myelin. And basically that becomes a superhighway in our head. So whenever we get triggered, it's like the thought, I'm not enough. We are come up against something, some challenge, and I just feel we're not enough. And it erodes our confidence in going forward. But the good news is that with neuroplasticity, up to 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they used to say, look, by the time you're in your teens, your house is almost built and not a lot changes. But with neuroplasticity, and the research has come through with that in the last 20 odd years, it's a very different story. Basically, we're hardwired to change. Our brains are hardwired to change. We can take on a label of an identity when people speak over our lives, whether it's maybe a school teacher or a parent or caregiver, and they say something, and we take that on as a label. And before we long, we actually start living to that label, living to that identity, and how we see ourselves affects how we show up in life. But the good news is we can change. Now, what I want to do is a small exercise. If I would ask you just to put your arms to the sides, okay, and fold your arms. Just fold your arms, folks. Okay. And then take your arms back. Okay, just take your arms out of that fold and fold them again, but fold them the other way. Just fold them the other way. Now, how does that feel? How does that feel? It just seems it's a bit different, isn't it?
Really strange.
All change is hard at first, messy in the middle, but great at the end. Okay, so once we start to do something a different way, it just disrupts the normal, and it just feels uncomfortable for a while. And that's what change is like. And sometimes where we go after something like I am not enough, where I always envisage the country track with the horse and cart, and you see the track of the wheels has made the tracks in the mud, and it's like a rut, and the horse and cart goes up and down that. So you can imagine trying to disrupt that and create a new pathway on that path. There's going to be a bit of bumpiness, a bit of a change, and that's what we experience when we go to change our neural pathways. When we think a certain way and we try to say, okay, I am enough. What's going on? Is there a disruption there? And it feels awkward, like folding your arms, but it gives you a sensation of that. I can't really talk about enough and not being enough without talking about comparison. And comparison is just deadly. We should only compare ourselves with ourselves, folks. I have a motto. It's like I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I was. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I was. Comparison is just so unfair because we compare people's outsides with our insides. We get the dirt on us. We get the lowdown on us. We know all our thoughts. We know all our hang-ups and weaknesses. And all we see is the other person from the outside, and we try to balance the two, but it's an unfair balance. And we can't talk about comparison without mentioning social media. Is that a minefield? Social media is, have you noticed how people generally put up their highlight reel? They put up the highlight reel, so it's not a lot of the rubbish goes up, and it leaves that, if you can imagine, you have 365 friends. It means in a year, at least one a day, somebody's having a highlight reel. And if we're comparing it, it's like we're looking there going, look, they're away doing this, and they're doing that, and they're succeeding in this. My life sucks. I'm not enough. So the comparison thing on social media is it's just deadly. Not to mention just the blatant bullying and intimidation that can be used on social media too. I feel I should bring some of my own story back into that field, in the sense when I lost my hearing, folks, it was a very difficult time. I had a journey, a lot of stuff in that foreign land that I found myself in, not in just the hearing loss and the practicalities of that, of trying to run a business, and I couldn't order a pizza. Yeah, anywhere I went, any meetings or whatever, I had to take someone else with me. Everything was done by email and all communication. It was just very tiring. I was continually drained. I was in a place where to try and focus and hear what was going on was always leaving me just very tired. Now, it was also the psychological land that it was a land full of misinterpretations. I have to say, like, at times my thought life was just all over the place. I just felt completely stuck, isolated. And I said all that to say, it's not what happens to you, but what happens inside you. When you go to change that, it's what you reply to that. And I had to pick myself up out of that. Once I got the hearing back, it started to all work through that process. I just say all that to say, folks, I've journeyed the I am not enough cave. I've journeyed that, and I've come out of that. I'm not saying I completely struggle, and saying, like, sometimes even as I was preparing for this, the thought goes through my head, I am not enough. I'm going to talk about thoughts very soon. But what I do want to do is talk about 3 strategies to help with I am not enough thoughts. And Julie, if you want to put up the first slide. Okay, the first slide is just to normalize it, folks. To normalize it. I'm not thin enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not ever enough for whatever reason. We all have these thoughts. We all struggle with it. So there is an element of, there is safety in numbers, and to normalize it can be a relief that you are not abnormal. You're not a freak because you think these things. It comes back to the words we tell ourselves. Our words frame our life. You would never go for coffee with somebody who would speak to you the way that you speak to yourself. And yet we bully ourselves. Sometimes the most toxic relationship you're going to have is a relationship with yourself. So it's becoming aware of that, folks. Which brings me to the next slide. Julie, if you want to pop the slide up. Don't put too much weight on the feeling. Don't put too much weight on the feeling. If you notice the red bubble there, it's got thoughts create feelings, which create behavior, and behavior reinforces thoughts. Now, this is easier said than done, folks, but it's first and foremost to become aware. The feelings are there because of the thoughts. And it's like the old adage, you can't stop birds flying above your head in the sky, but you can stop them landing on your head and building a nest. This is a multimedia presentation. I'm not going to show you a demonstration. You're actually going to remember this, but this is I want you to think this is our thought. Can you see what that is? It's a wee tea bag. That's just a thought. That's all a thought is. It's kind of neutral. There's nothing to it. There's no substance to it. It's just a thought. Every day we have 70,000 thoughts that meander through our head. A lot of them repetitive, but it's whenever we take that thought, and whenever we start adding our essence to it, we start really giving it prominence in our thought and thinking about it, all of a sudden the flavors start coming out of it. And it's like we start to read everything through the glass of the thought, through the perspective of that thought. So all of a sudden we start building this wall, and everything adds to this story, and it becomes something way more than it ever was. It was just a thought. And it feels like a brick wall around us. It feels that it closes us in, and that feeling of the wall of I am not enough just feels insurmountable. We can't get through it or over it. But in reality, folks, it's just paper thin. we could just get our finger and just poke it through the wall of the thing. Literally, that's all it is. It's just a thought. It's to create space between the thinker and the thought, because the two are not the same. I'm going to drop a profound quote. Profound quote time. We live in the feeling of our thinking and not in the feeling of our circumstances. I'll say it again. We live in the feeling of our thinking and not in the feeling of our circumstances. And I guess the classic example of that would be anorexic. Okay, in the outside world, they're sickly thin. In the inside world, they see themselves as being fat. We live in the feeling of our thinking and not in the feeling of our circumstances. So I'm going to ask the question, where do you feel you're living in the feeling of your thinking? This is getting deep. Okay, I'm trying to make this as real and interactive for you as possible. And we can use, you don't have to use the group chat, you can use the, I'm not too techno, the big white screen. What's that called, Julie?
This is the whiteboard. Or the blackboard.
Look, I want you to think just a minute, okay? As this surfaces, whenever we talk about this stuff, all of a sudden it becomes a bit of a clarity to the thing. So you start seeing things and going, are you living in the feeling of your thinking? Okay, and I can think personally of times in my life where I just get caught up in a thought, and all of a sudden it snowballs, and it's like, before you know it, it's a real thing, and yet it's just a thought, and there was nothing to it. And all of a sudden you discover that what you were thinking never happened at all in the slightest. It was nowhere near it, and yet we've taken ourselves down that rabbit hole, and the feelings, and it's even starting to affect our behavior and the way we look at somebody or whatever. So I'm asking you now, where are you living in the feeling of your thinking? Take your time, folks. I got caught up in my thoughts, yeah. And the feeling of them, yeah. Yeah, I find it so hard to disengage the two. Thanks for the honesty. Yeah, it is really hard. It's easy to chat about it, but it's hard. It feels so real and fickle. Worry about too much, yeah. Thinking all the time, caught up in self-doubt, feeling not good enough, imposter syndrome, making something way bigger than it is, yeah. I feel alone. Find it so hard to disengage the two. I've got that somewhat stuck. Can't quite motivate past thinking. I don't belong here. Learning is not always take away my thoughts seriously. Okay, guys, this is fantastic. Thanks. This is, you're showing up to yourself here. Some really open, honest statements being made here. I just want you to think of the weight of what it takes to carry that thought, not feeling. See, we feel we've got a reality problem, but in reality, we've got a thinking problem. We feel we've got a reality problem, well, in reality, we've got a thinking problem. When we back off and you say that and you realize that, think, what would it be like just to leave the weight of that sack of those thoughts and those feelings, just to leave it and to walk free of that? Because we think we have a reality problem, but in reality, we've got a thinking problem. Because of whatever's going on in the past, possibly, and different scenarios and circumstances of things have happened to us, it triggers us to think a certain way. One of the best things we can do is just talk back to it. It's a bit like the growth mindset. I did an earlier session, and I think there's a growth mindset session tomorrow afternoon. Katie's running that, I believe, but the growth mindset would basically say you talk back to that. So the fixed mindset, or I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I can't achieve enough, if that happens, the best thing to do is actually speak back to it, and I speak that back to it, not so much I am good enough, but actually it's great to make it second person. So Allison, I am good enough. The researchers are saying that there's more weight in that. Yeah. We'll move on to the next slide, which is serve or contribute. And this is so simple a way to start dealing with that sense of I'm not enough. To contribute, to serve, to move from me to we. It's the scientists would say that when we're social beings, we're made to be part of the tribe, and when we are bringing our piece to the tribe, we're contributing, we're serving. It releases feel-good chemicals that actually neutralize the likes of the chemicals like cortisol, which is a stress chemical. So just think about that. When we are stepping out, it takes our eyes off ourselves, and when our world becomes very small, the best thing you can do is actually go and give or serve. And maybe you can think, well, in the last year we've had the pandemic, and you can see how much of that arising within the nation, where we had clap for the NHS, we had Captain Tom doing the laps. You know, there was something about giving back and contributing, and it helped people cope with what was going on. Maybe you can think of instances, and I'll again open this up for the whiteboard. Think of times where you've experienced that. Okay, I can think of a time, for instance, where I was giving away a present to somebody, and I was more excited about giving the present than they were really in receiving it. Or a surprise party, you know, where you've organized a thing and it's about to kick off, and you get that sense of what that's going to bring to the other person. Okay, so I want you just to write up on the whiteboard just the times where you've seen in your own life where that dynamo has kicked in for you. Take your time. Teaching someone how to do something, yep. Volunteering in a charity shop. Volunteering. Supporting my friends when they're going through hard times. Supporting an elderly relative. Being an older sibling. Supporting. Organizing a surprise holiday for someone. Volunteering as a counselor in America. Mentoring someone and watching them thrive. Helping parents out. Wow, they're coming thick and fast now. This is great. So try to remember back and tap into how you felt at those times. Maybe you're still in that space where you're doing that, but just you can get a sense of what that was bringing back to you. Not that that was your intention to do it, but the old adage is it's better to give than receive. When we're givers and not takers, there's something in that helps us. It helps us overcome the I am enough, because we're wired to get to the last breath of our last day and feel we have contributed, that our lives matter. There's something in us that want to do that. So we're tapping into something that's something really deep in us. Before we move on, is there any more? Yeah, go ahead. Feel valued. Sorry, I'm sort of talking before you've answered the question. Sorry. You feel valued? Yeah. How did it make you feel?
Sorry, that's my bad.
No, you're okay. That's good. Great. Okay, yeah. Mental peace, useful. Great. Appreciated. Yeah. Proud. Yeah. Worthwhile. Good. Give a sense of achievement. Valued. Important. motivated, self-worth, proud, helpful. Smart. Oh. I feel wanted. I'm amazed the complete contrast between, I'm really amazed between the complete contrast of these words and the words that were coming up previously when we felt that not enough. Sometimes there's a case, folks, of taking it out of our head and into our life and going and contributing and just helping people. Yeah. Thanks for being so honest. We'll move on to the next slide, Julie. So we're moving into self-awareness, folks. And self-awareness is the ability to recognize and understand just our drives, emotions, and moods, how they impact us and how they impact others. Self-awareness is always the beginning of change. And the photograph is just, it's an eye, but it's like they always say, the eye is the window of the soul. And sometimes it's us to take the time to turn around and look in, just become self-aware. What we're feeling, why we're feeling it potentially. It's a wee bit like the sat nav. We used to go on holidays, and it's like, the scenario would go, we'd arrive at the airport, get the hire car, kids in their back, they're screaming, they're hungry. Are we there yet? We haven't got out through the first roundabout. We're parked up in the hard shoulder. We used to have this beat up old sat nav that we would plug into the cigarette lighter back in the day before cars had them inbuilt, and you would pull up and you have to wait. You would go and plug in where your destination is, and then you wait. You'd have to wait for the satellite to pick up where you're at. And our inner sat nav self-awareness is like that. If you want to go to Belfast today and put that into the sat nav, you're not going anywhere until it picks up where you're coming from, which part of the country you're coming from. And sometimes a wee bit like me coming out of the airport, I'm just in that big a rush, that big a hurry to get going that I just head off, and you're continually having to correct your journey. But hurry is it's like a contagious thing we have in the West. We're in a hurry, and it's like hurry addiction. We lose our peace. And I've said this before, but you can tell when folk have it, because when you ask them, how's it going? And they'll reply, I'm getting there. And the question is, okay, where's there? Because we only have here. To become self-aware, we have got to become focused on the present. Where are we at? Okay, in this situation, rather than it's easier to just rush ahead and not have to deal with those feelings that may be going to come up. But there's many people who have climbed the ladder because they've been in a rush. They've climbed the ladder of success only to get to the top, to get the gold watch, and realize they were against the wrong building all along. And their ego takes them somewhere where they don't actually really want to go. I can remember a client who, he wanted to be an entrepreneur. And he came and he just kept on sabotaging himself. And when we drilled into it, what he really wanted, he wanted the steady income, and he didn't want to give the hours and hours that it would potentially take to be an entrepreneur. So he just becoming aware, he liberated himself and realized just how much of the ego, which isn't all bad, but much of the ego was taken that way. In my own journey, I mentioned the counselling, going into counselling, and that was fascinating from where I was at and what I was walking through in my own life. And what I came away with, one of the main things that struck me was just how we're icebergs. We've got this 10% above the waterline, and that's in the conscious realm. And then we have a whopping 90% under the waterline, which is our unconscious world. And that's really where it all happens. The conscious world doesn't really, it's all stemming out of the unconscious, in the sense of our drives and motivations, limiting beliefs, fears, and even those, I'm not enough. So whenever something happens in the conscious realm, yeah, road rage is a perfect example. When road rage happens and somebody cuts somebody up and you get this over the top reaction, it's not because of that moment. There's something being triggered from down below. So it's always the triggers have been set off. I call them like wee landmines, and it's something's being triggered from down below, and it's showing up in our world. It's like every day, folks, we're writing a book. With regards to self-awareness, every day we're writing a book, and we just don't read it. We don't take the time to read it. With the iceberg thing in the counseling journey, it showed me that really we are complex, layered creatures. We think we know what we want. Generally, when I sit down with a client, and one of my first questions would be, "What do you want?" The first thing they say generally isn't it? Once you take the lift down a bit, it's something else. And of course, I had to journey that myself. Whenever I came back in the field of life, and I was learning to listen again and got my hearing, I started first to hear my own voice coming up about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to change and how I wanted to. What it burned into me with regards to compassion to help people change that were maybe stuck. And I had to make changes. I had to go and make changes in my life to put me to line up with what I wanted to do. One of the other things I picked up was just listening skills. I just realized how much communication is so much more than just the verbal, the words, but actually it's the whole environment and reading the environment. So when I'm with a client, I'm listening to what they want, but then noticing and listening to what they're doing to stop them from getting what they want. And one of the wee things I love saying, and I'll drop it in here, a wee takeaway is just, there's a lot in a sigh. And I use this all the time around friends and family, and they're all at it now saying it, but it's like, and use it back in me. But you can ask somebody, "So how's it going?" or "How's this?" and they'll go, "Hi, well, and there's a lot in a sigh. There's something deep going on there. So it's always curious just to reflect back. So what's in a sigh? And just let that person just do their own digging. Well, that's what that brings up. So I'm moving into a profound quote coming up is, "You don't know what you're thinking until you hear yourself speak it." You don't know what you're thinking until you hear yourself speak it. So what I'm encouraging folks to do is, for self-awareness, is get a friend, get anybody you can, a family member, somebody that is trusted. Even there's research in it. There's even benefit of going and talking to a lamppost. Just don't get seen doing it, okay? But just to talk it out. And I'm going to give you 3 figures here that'll help you. This is actually quite profound, okay? But we talk in 140 words per minute. We can listen at 400 words per minute, and we can think at 900 words a minute. Now you're sitting there going, where is this going? Okay. This is really quite, when you think about this, it explains so much, and real potential to change relationships. But on average, we talk at 140, and we can listen at 400. So as a wee snippet, that would explain why whenever you're talking to somebody or they're talking to you, there's plenty of space there for your mind to wander. So generally we're listening, but we're listening to what we want to say back rather than truly hanging there with the person as they're talking. But more importantly, in relation to self-awareness, if somebody's talking to you and they're thinking 900 words per minute in here, and they're only getting out 140 words per minute, it means on average there's roughly about 10% coming out. So the important thing is really just to slow it down, let the person, give them space. One of the most powerful coaching questions is, and what else? And what else? You watch the change in relationships around your life. Whenever you say to somebody, they're talking, and just ask them, whenever they get that silence part, you just say, and what else? And it's amazing what happens to that person. The sense of worth and value. But it still holds for the self-awareness, because it helps somebody unpack what they're journeying. We don't know what we're thinking until we hear ourselves speak it. It's like the washing machine. I like keeping it simple. It's like the washing machine. You know, you get the washing machine, you put in the dirty clothes, we put in the soap or whatever else goes in, and softener, and you close it up and it's doing the whole thing. And you look in there, you know, it's just dirty clothes and muddy old water. Nothing's happening, you know, and it's spinning away. What changes it? It's the rinse comes. You get the rinse cycle and it comes through 2 or 3 rinses, okay? The rinse, folks, is the talking it out. We've got, like the wash machine, 900 words a minute, tumbling around. It just seems like a muddy mess. Yeah, we can't make sense of it. We just can't see it until we speak it out. Once we speak it out, it can bring a clarity. So the rinse, as we speak it out as such, brings a clarity. So for self-awareness, it's amazing how many times I've sit with people, and whenever they talk it, they sound surprised in their own voice that came out of them. Okay. We'll move on to building self-awareness. The next slide there, Julie. Okay, just a wee elephant there. To build self-awareness, distraction. We are living in a time where there's the attraction of distraction. My goodness, our phones, which is never too far away from us, is always baying for our attention. Those guys in Silicon Valley have done a great job. They're tapping into our dopamine machine within us. Internally, we're literally a chemical factory, and we get dopamine shots when there's a ding in our phone, there's a like, we get addicted to picking the thing up. So it means that we are continually in a position of distraction from what's really going on inside. I've got a question for the group chat. Is what is the opposite of distraction? What is the opposite of distraction? Peace, focus, presence. Attention, presence, traction. Oh. In the zone, facing up to reality. Okay. Awake, concentration. Listening. The opposite, I would put it to you, of distraction. We had one correct answer, is traction. And traction is a sense of it leads to action. So as we play in words there, so traction leads to distraction, leads to traction, leads to action. And it's all in the action. And this actually, one thing to be said about self-awareness is you need the action. With self-awareness comes the empowerment, but you have to have the action. You've got to start doing it. Otherwise, the most self-aware people in the world are actually, they're the most depressed. You know, they just stay in that perpetual being self-aware and not actually having a river out of the thing, which is the empowerment. So there has to be action out of it. So distraction, traction, action. The other one I have there, we've commented on before, is just that speak it out. Just to speak it out and get it out. And when you get it out, there can come a clarity to the thing. I've mentioned journaling there. Journaling is having a conversation with yourself. It's having a conversation with yourself. Write so nobody else is ever going to read it, and just write not what you do during the day, but how you feel, how it's engaging in that deeper part of you, and just write. And as you write it, it's a way of introducing yourself to yourself. If you have that attitude to it. But don't take it on board if you feel it's not your fit. If you feel writing is not your fit, don't go with it. The other one is mindfulness. Mindfulness is high resolution consciousness, right? Mindfulness it's not trying to control your thought, it's more stopping your thought controlling you. I do some mindfulness meditation, and like everybody else, I have the struggle where you sit down and you sit yourself, okay, you set your time. There's a great app called Headspace, really encourage you to get that. It is good, full of great stuff, but it would lead you in journeys how to get into mindfulness. But you realize that mindfulness, you're doing it for the journey, not for the tick the box, I've done my 20 minutes mindfulness, but it's actually being aware of the journey into it. And by that I mean we sit down to focus on a thought, on our breathing, and your mind straight away kicks back and you're off at last night's football. You bring it back, your mind straight away kicks off again. Before you know it, you're thinking about your essay you have to hand in the next day, and you bring it back. I would put it to you that bringing it back part, if you've been to the gym, you know to go to the gym and you measure everything in reps. 1 rep, 2 rep, yeah. It's like every time we bring back our thinking to our breath and mindfulness, that's a rep. And the more you do that, the more you build a muscle for it. So you're building the muscle by doing that. And the last thing I have on there is hurry. And again, we've touched on that. It's that hurry addiction. It's just a sense of slowing it down. Like the wee mate here in the photograph, our big mate, just taking time out. One of the best things is just nature. Sometimes this isn't complicated. We overcomplicate it. But there's a way of grounding ourselves just where we just get into nature and walk and focus on the beauty around you. And it brings you back to center. I can't mention, it's not on the slide, but about humility and the influence of humility with self-awareness. Humility is it's essential to become self-aware. The people that aren't humble, and humility it's not thinking less of yourself, but it's thinking of yourself less. And the people that aren't humble, they have a hard time becoming self-aware. They tend to over-exaggerate and overestimate their strengths and completely underestimate their blind spots. And they reckon they're 6 times more likely to derail. So humility is a factor with self-awareness. Okay, folks, you've done really well. Let's look at time left. What I would encourage you to do, yeah, let's do this. Okay, I want you to think of, we're going to do a 360. By that I mean I want you to think of 3 friends. Okay, just in your mind's eye now. When I say friends, I mean really good, trusted friends. Friends you call upon, if it came to it. Okay, just have them in your mind's eye, the 3 friends. Now I want you to write this down. Actually, write down, I'm in a leadership workshop. I am in a leadership workshop, comma, honestly, what is it like being on the other side of me? I am in a leadership workshop, comma, honestly, what is it like being on the other side of me? See, one of the ways to build self-awareness is actually that question, what's it like being on the other side of me? And be prepared to receive feedback. But that's a powerful question. You go and try that with your loved ones, but I've given you that in script because I want you to now pick up your phone, your email, and as that is there in that question I just gave you, I'm in the leadership workshop. Honestly, what's it like being on the other side of me? And you can't put on the tail end of that, be gentle. I want you to text or email those 3 friends you have in your mind. Just cut and paste the first time and send it to them, because I want replies before the session's out today. We're going to see what sort of replies we get. So again, take your time, just go ahead and do that. Get your phone. I'm in a leadership workshop. Honestly, what's it like being on the other side of me? So just send that email, send that text to those 3 friends. You realize that you'll get back answers like, are you okay? You'll get back answers like, are you on the drink? You're going to get back answers, do you need a hug? Don't worry, just ask the genuine question. This is powerful, folks. We'll see what the answers are, and I'll ask whenever we get replies before the end of the session, put them up into the chat box. I think Anita mentioned you keep working away, and I'll continue with the remainder of what I'm going to say about disappointment and failure. Disappointment and failure. And I mentioned about my daughter. My daughter Grace she would be in the family. She would not take criticism too well, and she has this. She goes into this mode, and I can't remember if I shared this in this session or the last session, but it's like going to the doctor and saying to the doctor, I'm making Oliver. Apologise if I've done it in this. No, I haven't done this session. I've 2 sessions back to back here. Going to the doctor and saying, Doctor, I am making Oliver. I don't know what's wrong with me. And the doctor says, okay, well, show me what's wrong. And they'll go, Doctor, so sore in that, so sore. And my head, it's aching all over. My leg is so sore. Everything's just so sore to touch. Doctor, what's wrong with me? The doctor looks and goes, you have a broken finger. Yeah. And it's like our daughter now, every time the daughter who does not take feedback well, she goes into this everybody's to blame sort of mode. And we go like this, we go, ow, ow, ow. And we get the joke with the thing, but there is this element, disappointment and failure. We have to be prepared to take feedback and some criticism. I believe you can say anything to anybody as long as it's said the right way, in the right terms. So if it's coming in the right way, in a genuine desire to see uplift and see you better yourself, take it on board, because that is gold. With regards to disappointment and failure, my sons, when they came through mini rugby, there was a thing called the participation trophy or participation medals, and they actually did away with the idea of having a winner. And it was all this idea of participation. That is a load of rubbish. Okay, I felt that then, but now the likes of the Harvard and things are coming out with research saying that is a load of rubbish, because what we're doing with the kids is robbing their sense of building resilience and building grit for life, because life is not like that. Life is not like that. It's a bit like lawnmower parenting, where parents, we try to help our kids as much, but it's like the kids doing the lawnmower, but we're ahead of them all the time, moving away any obstacles, so they don't have to have any impact or any sort of, any stage where they'll have to actually build resilience to think and engage what they have to do about the obstructions in front of them. Sometimes we're robbing them from developing that. So the best thing to do is just let that grit and resilience build up as a muscle. By the way, I should say, if you have any feedback, if you've had any friends, please send the texts up on or the messages up on the group chat. But I can't talk about disappointment and failure without talking about the amygdala. I mean, failure is in some ways is essential for our development. If we are prepared not to fail and take risks, everything's going to be so safe, and we'll inhibit ourselves in our growth. There has to be the risk. The growth mindset, which I would encourage you to go to tomorrow with session, it creates that environment where it's safe to risk. But we've got this thing built into us in our amygdala, which is the prefrontal cortex, which is basically like a house alarm. It's always scanning for friend or foe. I imagine every 5 seconds, it's just scanning in for friend or foe. It doesn't have to be somebody coming into the house with some sort of weapon. It could be a piece of coursework sitting in front of us that we're seeing that as being a threat to our status. We get the position where you get amygdala hijack, where it's like, if you imagine the alarm in your house and it's faulty, and it means it's going off at everything. And that can happen when, say, we face some sort of trauma or tragedy, and our amygdala can be heightened. So we're in this state where everything is a threat, and we calm that down by calming the circuits. Breathing is a great way to doing that. But I'm bringing that all out because that's what's going on inside. Because our brain wants predictability and our emotions want stability. That's how we're wired. So we have to be aware internally how we're wired, and sense how we're going to engage with whatever is in front of us. Because fear, folks, is just growth in wolf clothing. Fear is growth in wolf clothing. We think we see something and we fear. Our natural reaction, because it's coming from within is to back off. I couldn't do that, but really that's growth. So it's turning around and going towards the growth. How are we doing? I'm just looking at the chat box here. Wow, I missed what Kathleen was getting there. What was Kathleen's feedback? It's just popping up.
Kathleen's feedback was, it is absolutely lovely. You're very encouraging and give great advice and are full of giggles. So that's what she got.
Encouragement's oxygen for the soul. It's oxygen for the soul. When these comments come back, I would take them and stick them on your fridge. Stick them beside the mirror in the morning so you see them every day. That's food for your soul. Many people have been very nice, but it makes me feel weird. Okay. Just be curious about that weirdness. There's nothing wrong with that weirdness. Sometimes the pathways that we've created, it's just that thing like folding the arms. You feel weird. You're feeling weird folding your arms. You feel weird being the recipient of people saying nice things about us. That's okay. That'll change. The more you allow that in, the more you allow the self-compassion to come in. Give yourself a pat on the back. I'm not where I want to be, but you know what? I'm not where I was. Okay. Closing up, just where I'm conscious of time, but change in our relationship to failure is, I would encourage you the growth mindset, because that really is got an antidote for the fear factor in the sense of disappointment and failure. You just change your relationship to it, and it can, again, it's come back to that. You fold your arms, you feel the awkwardness, but it changes the way we're wired. We're changing neural pathways when we do it. Okay, let's see any more comments there. A ray of sunshine with a positive mindset, easy to talk to. Okay, nobody has a bad word to say. The personality is easy and to get on with. Okay, folks, we're coming to the end. I think because of time, I'm going to pass it over to the girl, over to Julie there, or Rachel, whoever's going to take it. But it's just keep the questions coming and keeping up the feedback from your friends. That one, the last page there was just a summary of what we've covered today. The main thing I would suggest would be the I am enough in the middle. That's supposed to be a wee pill beside I am enough. And I would take that pill. There's something in that. Take that pill. Dr. Ali says take that pill 4 or 5 times a day. Just stand in front of a mirror, look at yourself and say, I am enough. That has changed people's lives. Just to start rewiring the programming, I am enough. Just I am enough. But we've got the other things there about normalizing it and not taking it too seriously in our feelings and to serve and contribute. But I think time's up, so I'm going to pass it over to the girls to give you some info.
Sorry about that, Ali.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. That was a fantastic session, and we really value the insights and some amazing quotes. I'm loving the quotes. There's a couple I need to follow up on that I missed that I really want to hear back. I suppose to wrap up, I think to firstly highlight that Ali has offered to do one-to-one coaching with students and graduates. And you can register your interest for that through the Access Advice link on the website, the Skills Week website. So Ali has offered his time to do one-to-one coaching, and I think given what we've learned today, I think there's a real value in that, and that having the opportunity to speak to somebody else and hear your own voice as well. I want to also promote the fact that we are advertising a whole range of placements and graduate jobs as part of this week, and they could be found on the jobs and placements tab on the Skills Week, where you can link out to Handshake. I think Rachel's putting up a range of links for us in the chat box for you to link straight out to those as well. And I also just want to promote a few other sessions that are coming up today and tomorrow. So we're really excited to have the Northern Ireland women's football team, who have just qualified for the Euros next summer. Such an amazing achievement, and we're going to hear all about the how they overcame so many obstacles to achieve that, and hear about their mindset and how they continued through that journey despite all the setbacks. Katie Matthews, who we mentioned, is doing the growth mindset tomorrow lunchtime. She's also doing a session earlier in the day about perceptive peers and how you can actually look out for your friends' mental well-being and how you can support them. And our finale tomorrow is Unlock Your Future with David Mead. I don't know if anyone's ever seen David on TV or recently when he's been doing his online sessions, but he is amazing and great fun. So there's lots still to engage with. We're not finished yet. There's so much to be going on with, and we're just really excited to continue the week in the really great way that it's been. And lastly, just to thank you for your participation in today's session, and also for Allison for his contribution to this session and the others, which you can pick up on our recordings in the talks pages. We've got all our resources there for you to follow up and catch up on for things that you might have missed. Thank you.